person in this room that really understands that is Noam Ramsey. And I'm starting to get the education that Noam got a couple of years ago. He still looks pretty youthful for the process. But to think about running for governor, my God, the $25 million and so forth. But that is the mission of the guy who sits on the ninth floor right now. And by the way, ambition is not necessarily a bad thing. I've moved from councilman to county legislator to assemblyman to senator. So ambition itself intrinsically is not a bad thing. But what's important is if you follow what you believe is good government, you will have the best possible chance of being elevated from a position to another one. And that elevation comes because people say, you've done a good job and you deserve election. It even begins in your first race. When somebody looks at Nancy Barr and her public service prior to running for this job, or Maeve Scott, who wasn't introduced, who's running for city council in Yonkers, in the southeast corner of Yonkers. And if you're from Yonkers or you know people in Yonkers, you want to introduce them to Maeve because she's a terrific person. That's the McLean Avenue area. Any of you guys ever go to those Irish bars down here? Late night food. Man, I'll tell you what, 11 o'clock at night, head for McLean Avenue, right? But for whatever your experience is, you try to build from a positive result. You make things better for people, and that becomes the basis for which you move forward. Rob Astorino is a very smart guy, and he is no dope. He is not incompetent, and he is a terrific communicator. Let's grant what is obvious to grant. The guy could talk a hungry dog off a meat truck. But I'm sorry about that. And I could probably talk a tired dog to sleep. But the important thing here is that the decisions you make for Westchester County are more than just what gets you through the next 4 years or what gets you through the next election. I've been through a lot of elections, and nobody, even I, can't remember what exactly happened in the '95 election or in the '03 election, because anything I did that was just short-term vision that got me through that election, if it had long-term negative effects, would affect people today, and the benefit of winning that one race in '95 would be irrelevant. It's like the terrific steak you had 3 months ago. You know, it was a great steak. Do you still talk about it with your friends, Tom? Do you say, boy, that was a great meal I had 3 months ago? No, you know, human nature being what it is. So this race, in my judgment, is about whether or not the people of Westchester are going to pay attention to the specifics of how county government is being run and will take into account that the decisions that are going to be made in the next 4 years have to be long range in nature. And if you understand that, then you realize you do not sell off an airport for a 1 year big infusion of money and then a smaller amount so that for 35 of the 40 years you only get $2 million. And at the end of the day, you've lost a valuable asset, and even more importantly, you've lost control over something that affects people's lives. How many of you notice there's a big body of water at the end of the airport runway? You know, by accident when you're coming down 680, there's a big lake over there, right? That is a drinking watershed. That's a drinking watershed. And if somebody says, and I've heard this said just yesterday on local radio, well, I live in Yorktown. What do I care about the airport? Let me tell you what, dude, you care about the drinking water at the end of the runway. It's not just North Castle and Rye Brook's problem or White Plains and Harrison's problem. It's a broad-based problem. And if you sell off the airport, which is what this is, the 40-year sell-off of the airport, if you sell that airport off, you lose control over protection of that drinking watershed. Now, you start getting deep in the weeds like this, and you know, people are always going to give me advice, and they say, you know, you ought to do this, and then the next guy says, you ought to do the exact opposite of what that guy just said. But in general, people say, you know what, most of us don't really want to hear the big story. They don't want to hear the big story. He's got a story to tell them, which he says, come on in, Tim Idoni, County Clerk. He has a story which he says, I didn't raise your taxes.
That's it.
I'm a nice guy. You know, I'm well barbered. Latimer's a little more disheveled than I am. And I'm your guy. And that's enough. It's not enough. No. It's not enough. You sell off that airport, and you've done something bad. You've done something wrong. It's got to be called for what it is. That is a public, that is not a distressed asset. You're not dealing with something that's decrepit, and my God, can you get somebody to take it off your hands? That airport prints money, and he wants access to that money. He wants to have that money in his budget to do the things he wants. And by the way, there's a deal to be made because JetBlue would love to see the expansion of that airport. They'd love to see a second side-by-side runway, one that you could use for general aviation, Once you take general aviation off the main runway, my God, you could make that a hub for what you want. You can extend the length of the, you can put those Mauser lights at the other end, so you can do instrument landing. Am I deep in the weeds? This is what it is all about. It's being deep in the weeds. It's having a county executive who understands the specifics of issues and what has to be dealt with in an intelligent, productive way. Now, if we're just going to elect people because they have the zeitgeist of the moment, then you got Donald Trump. You got people mad, they want to drain the swamp, they think Hillary Clinton is a crook, and I'm voting for Donald Trump. So now you got Donald Trump. I don't know how much longer you're going to have Jeff Sessions. You just lost Sean Spicer. I assume they're going to tap their finger, bring Kellyanne Conway in from the bullpen. I don't know what they're going to do. But whatever they do, and this is not to say that Barack Obama was a perfect president. He was not. I had big troubles with stuff he did in education. This is to say Bill Clinton was not a perfect president. It's not to say our side is great, your side is bad. It's to say that you need honest, rational, realistic, working together. Not, I have a plan and I'm going to shove it down your throat. Why? Because I can do that. That's not the way you run the Village of Larchmont. That's not the way you run the Village of Larchmont, Bubba. You guys have public hearings and you open it up, and you and your colleagues, as Ann and Marlene were when they were on the board of your current college, you're out in the community. Somebody comes up to you, asks you a question, you start answering the question right on the spot. That's what happens in the town of Mamaroneck with Tom and his colleagues. You know, that's how Danielle is a Rise City Council person. White Plains is not a little Albany. White Plains is a big town government, and it ought to function like a big town government. A town supervisor that you could see at the grocery store and say, hey, can we talk about this? I really feel concerned about this. And that executive doesn't show up with an entourage of people because he's going to be governor, but you see a guy walk in and go, hey, Bruce, how's it going? What's new in Pleasantville? George, why don't you come to the diner? We got a couple of people to talk. Good, I'm going to give a call to Darren Tolles, your county legislator. Darren, are you free this morning? We're going to see some guys at the Pleasantville diner. Or if you're part of a workforce, all right, a public workforce, people who do work. My friend Benny was a member of the public workforce. He did good, solid public work during his career before retirement. Kimberly and Elio are doing that right now in their world. And that you deal with people who are working, not as if there's some sort of cannon fodder for your ideology. You deal with them as human beings. It's not going to be easy to close these contracts. He hasn't left a dime in the budget to do this. But somehow you need a motivated workforce. Because if you call the county government looking for some service that you as a taxpayer have a right to do, you want a motivated person on the other side of the phone. You want a person to say, oh yeah, fine, I'll be happy to help you out. Sure. You know, when you call Kat and you have a complicated question, you don't exactly know where the answer is coming from, you want somebody to help you to do that. Not somebody who's sitting there saying, I have been dumped on, and because I've been dumped on, I'm burned out. I have a date in mind, Friday, May 19th, 2021. That's the date I'm going to retire. I can't wait to get the hell out of here. That's what you have in county government. And why? Because you've gotten away from the standard of a town government, small city government where you're neighborly, where you're friends. And by the way, I have friends of mine who are very conservative, and we sit and we talk. I kid around with them. Sometimes it gets so hot, we talk about sports, we talk about grandkids, we talk about something else, just to change the topic. But we still treat each other as friends. You look at Washington, D.C., it's off the rails now. It's off the rails. They cannot get a person in the other party, not just to work with them, but they don't want to do it. They say, we're going to do it with our 50 votes. Wait a minute. What about crafting a plan that both sides could agree to? No. And if we're out of power, we're never going to support anything you do. That is not what the Founding Fathers intended. That is not how they worked through the original Constitution. Keep in mind, the brilliance of the Constitution had to be amended right away with 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. 10 amendments right away after the Constitution was done. So don't tell me that any of us are so bright that we're fixed in what we're going to do. We need to change the things that are wrong, and we need to do it as people together. In closing, this is going to be a tough race. Good move. This is, but everybody stole your sign. So they now know I'm going to steal third. In conclusion, this race is going to ask you to do a lot of grunt things, a lot of things that are not glorious. This is kind of a neat moment, you know, we're talking, and there's telephone calls that are going to be made out of this office and out of the other offices, and those telephone calls will be to people who may or may not want to hear you call them. And it's going to be tough to pull out of them the information you need. There's going to be canvassing to be done, and as hot as it is today, when the canvassing comes in late October, it's going to be cold and kind of miserable in the exact opposite way that today is miserable. you're going to be asked to come stand with me at a train station. No greater love hath anybody for a friend than to stand there at 6:15 in the morning. And I've had people with, so far I've done 9 stations so far. Darren and I have done one, and Nancy and I have done one, a few others. Debbie Friedman was there with Nancy as a good friend. Tests the bonds of friendship. And I'm waiting, I'm trying to hold off as many people from doing that as late as possible so that I don't, when you do Larchmont, you need everybody. You can do Phillips Manor with just the two of us. But the bottom line is, those are grunt work jobs. This isn't where you're watching TV, or you're going out for a cup of coffee with a friend and debating public policy. This is grunt work, and this is what it's going to take to win. The other guy's got a lot more money than I do. But that doesn't make me afraid. Bob Cohen had 4 times the amount of money I did. Joe Dillon, who doesn't have any more money than I do personally. I mean, the two of us together are looking for nickels to put in the machine. But he outspent me 2 to 1. Julie Killian outspent me close to 3 to 1. But we won every time. And we won because all of us, not just me, all of us have a tremendous work ethic. And why do you have a tremendous work ethic? Because you believe in something. And what you believe in is not negative. It's not, I hate the other guy. That's not enough. National Democrats better understand that. Yeah, being not the other guy is not enough. You've got to have a positive message. Make the points of comparison where they're wrong and you're right, but give people a reason to vote for you. And don't write people off. It doesn't matter what their skin color is, it doesn't matter what they do for a working living. I grew up in one of the poorest neighborhoods in this county. I was the only white kid in the neighborhood. I live in a very wealthy community now, although I am not personally, in the same category as many of our neighbors. There's an alpha and the omega to the county. You got to deal with all of it, not some of it. Because if you win by division, you can't lead. You can't unify this party.